One of the more challenging tasks I had was putting these lines into the sail. These lines are reefing lines that are used either when the sail is being folded or if we wanted to reduce the amount of sail which would take place in a reef. And so the sail could be dropped down and rolled up using these lines to tie them together. So the next thing we're going to do is along this line which indicates where the sail ties are, I'm going to punch a hole in the center of each one of these bands that in fact make up the sail. It was probably better to do this when the sail was not on the boat, but since I made that error, I had to come up with a method of being able to punch the holes, and I use a piece of foam at the back of the sail. I put the pin on the center line and press in, and that gives you a little support when you're trying to put the pin through, and doesn't distort the sailcloth or silk span. Now we're going to make up the sail ties using some thread. The first problem we have is that depending on the thread that you're using, the thread tends to go all over the place. And I used some polyester thread on the first model, and to cut it simply, that was a disaster. And then I got in these pure cotton lines which have a certain amount of stiffness to them. And so the solution then is I developed a board which you may have seen in other videos, and I simply take the board and stretch the line on that board and simply wrap it around at a predetermined length based on what you want those lines to be. So it's been on the board for a while and it's stretched out as much as it can be. So now we're going to cut it. I have predetermined lines to cut them off. So I simply take it off the board and picking them all up, I cut them off. And I do the same thing on the other side. And you want to get a nice clean cut. Then I take each one and I line it up in halves, and I make sure I get a nice tight center bend. Sometimes you have to open the hole up a little bit, and then you take a nice clean end and simply slip it in the hole. And down to the center point, and you do that all along the sail. Of course, it never ends up simple as that, because if you simply put them there, you need to stick them to the sail, and when you actually put water on the thread, where the water touches, the thread starts to unravel, and then the part that has no water on it goes all over the place, like a crazy piece of hair, like my head. So the solution to that is you need to find a way to strap it down. And I did this by simply making up two buttons, nice big fat ones, so that the clamp can fit around the mast, and very carefully placed it on the sail and clamped it in place, and this helped tremendously. You then take a tweezers and pull each one so that they're all going as straight down as possible, and that where you have the halfway point is pulled gently but tight against the bottom of the hole in the sail. I use a fairly light glue. I dilute it as much as I can, simply because if you use too strong a concentrate of glue, you may actually see it on the sail, and you don't want that. You want an invisible attachment. And I put the glue on both sides of the sail to make sure that the coverage is even. So let's gently take this off. Take this back clamp. Be careful of your lines. And as you can see, except for the one that I actually didn't stick, all of them are nicely hanging down on both sides. And I'm really quite happy with that. So we now go and do the second and the third reefing spot on the main sail. As we're on a roll, many of you may have seen Tom Laurier's video on how to wrap ropes and hang them on the boat. So I've made a slight modification to his process because I really struggled to keep the lines together after I take them off the jig. So I made a slight modification which I'll show you. This is a copy of Tom Laurier's jig. And I follow very much the same method that he did, and then I take the line stick it on, wrap around the first pin, around the back, around the second pin, and then go around 3 or 4 times, very much like he did, and then off to the side. So that's his jig, and then what he does is he pulls this pin out and pulls the loop back on the inside, puts a twist on it, and then just pulls this pin down. The problem I've had when I've stuck this is that this part of the loop comes out. So to solve that problem, I have started a technique where I take this end and put one more wrap around the jig and pull it through tightly. It should come through the same hole that it went through in the first place. Is that when you're pulling the loop tight, that it goes over all the pins. There we go. And the other thing I do with the loose end is I strap it on the side anywhere you want, so that it sticks on the side. And I pull this up so that I get a nice tight loop here. And then I don't put any glue on the loop here, because what I tend to find, it gets stiff no matter how I try. The diluted glue is exactly as he suggests. And I put some in the middle and leave that to dry, and it'll be exactly as Tom's suggestion, except this little end won't come out. And you can see what the finished product looks like, and you see the little extra tie on the side. Another modification are the pedestals that I use. They're made up of 3/16 brass, This will give you an idea of what they look like. They're two different sizes because the keel slopes, and on this particular model it's 3/4 inch difference between the bow and the stern. So for the boat to sit level, you need to have two different heights. They're made up quite simply on the lathe, machined on both ends. This is 1/2 inch, which goes into the keel of the boat, and this is 7/8, which goes into the baseboard. And it has a little washer on it, and it really works very well. You can use the traditional pedestals. I just happen to like these because it's just, you see the model rather than the pedestal. There will be one more video in this series, which is really the lessons learned and some of the challenges that I've overcome and some of the things I've actually reversed between the first model, which is the constructor kit, and the scratch built model. So we'll see you in the final video.